Well, Sir Henry, thank you for agreeing to have a chat today. You're somebody that, of course, in a sense, we should have done right at the outset of these interviews, because you are the father, the mentor, the originator of the Honourable Company. But if I may, before we get on to the Honourable Company, may I just chat about, or ask you to chat about, your heritage, as it were? I mean, you and your family are not exactly new to Gloucestershire, are you?
No, we made a bit of money in London, building and brewing. And when we got enough money, we bought the estate here at Colesland in 1789.
Right.
So I'm the seventh generation here now.
Goodness me, yes, and you've managed to keep the estate together, and I think, and the village too, I think.
Well, yes, it's we had to sell about half of the land because of death duties when my grandfather died.
Right.
And there was a very high rate of tax in those days. We also had some London property, and that all had to go as well.
Right.
We owned Jeeves and Hawkes, the tailors, in used to be the only shop in Bond Street with a frontage on Albemarle Street as well.
Oh.
That raised quite a bit of money and paid for about half of the estate duty, which was very nice.
Yes,
and,
yes.
Then I came here. Really, my father was killed in World War II in North Africa in the Scots Guards. And so I've been here really since the 1950s. I did my bit of national service in the army and enjoyed it so much I signed on for a bit as well. But I got an earful of advice from my trustees, who said I was supposed to come home and start looking after property. So I went to your old college, Cirencester Agricultural College, called in those days Royal Agricultural College in those days.
Yes.
And learned a bit about estate management. And I've been here ever since, really, since 1956, I think it is, something like that.
Yeah. So you had the greatness of the management of the estate thrust on you at an early age.
Yes, I did. I mean, I was very lucky. I wasn't frightened of it. I thought it was the most amazing challenge, because over the previous 40 years or so, it had been very run down. It was in a shambolic state.
Right.
We had a couple of standpipes in the village street for household water. We had no loos in the houses at all earth closets in the garden. And I thought, come on, let's get going. And we've been at it ever since, really.
Yeah.
And it's I've been very fortunate, because most generations are probably only in a property for about 25 years. And I've been here for nearly 60 years. And so I've seen everything. I've seen it all again.
Yes.
I've seen it all again for the third time very often.
Yes, it's not déjà vu, it's déjà vu revisited, isn't it, very often?
That's right, yes.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's been a wonderful challenge, and I've enjoyed every minute of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lovely estate, and of course most people will know it. Members of the public will know it for its snowdrops, because you open every year, don't you?
Yes, we've got. I think we've been described as England's greatest snowdrop garden, and I'm not going to argue with that.
Yeah.
We've got about 300 different varieties here, and we do get literally thousands of visitors in February every year. But we've also got a wonderful collection of trees. My great-grandfather planted about 900 acres of new woods on bare Cotswold wolds. And so when you drive up the valley here and see all these woods, you think they've been growing here for centuries. They haven't. They've only been growing here for 100 years. And so that's been a particular interest, the forestry and the arboretum as well to me. Yeah. And we've got an amazing collection of trees from all over the world as well.
Well, he was ahead of his time in that, wasn't he? Because we're now, as you're talking about déjà vu, but of course we're now into a period where people are being encouraged to plant trees and reforest areas.
Yes, I think, I mean, we've got plenty of forestry, so we won't plant a lot more, but we plant a little bit more. But it's not very easy to plant trees, because the grant support is only just beginning to emerge on sort of slightly more realistic terms.
Yeah.
And with land worth about £10,000 an acre, you can't afford to plant trees which don't mature for 150 years.
Yeah, that's right.
You know, it doesn't add up, really.
No, the business case is not strong, is it? No.
Not strong. No.
So you've been in the county and a significant member of the county for a long time, but that's allowed you, thank goodness for Gloucestershire's sake, to become a very effective public servant for Gloucestershire. You served on councils and latterly as the Lord Lieutenant. How did that come about? How did you get involved?
Well, I'd always been interested. I used to take the Gloucestershire Echo at my primary school, believe it or not, I've always been interested in the county, and it used to be posted to me every day. And I joined the local district council in about 1950 something, 56 or 57, I think, and served there for 10 years. I thought it was pretty moderate stuff. We spent a lot of time debating on the colour to paint council house doors and things like that, and I thought that wasn't really challenging. And so I decided to have a go at the county council.
Right.
And after a bit of a schmozzle and some difficulty, which I won't elaborate on, I got elected to the county council. And within 3 years, I was made vice chairman of the education committee and the finance committee.
Right.
I needed a bit of help there because, of course, I didn't know much about state county education in those days. But I brought the experiences I'd had from my education. And so I was keen to see improvements all the time. And that was very interesting, enormously good work. And then gradually I moved on a bit, and I was asked to be chairman of or vice chairman of the council, where I was for 7 years, and followed by 2 years as chairman. And in those days, the chairman and vice chairman of the council really were the executives who ran it.
Right.
Nowadays, chairman of councils are just figureheads.
Right.
They have political leaders. I never stood with a political label. I just thought that politics happened in Westminster.
Yes.
Local politics were without party political influence. I do remember when I joined, the chairman of the county council, Peter Birchall, got all the new members in one day. And he said, I don't want to hear any of you mention that my party's policy is this or that. From now on, your party is Gloucestershire. Please remember that.
Yeah.
And it was very good advice, actually.
Yeah.
And all one thought about was Gloucestershire, Gloucestershire, Gloucestershire. And with the county's motto, Pro Sem Semper, always in the lead, that was a really good starting point. And you're forever looking to see Gloucestershire sort of heading the country, really, in politics. I mean, Gloucester was the first county in England to start comprehensive schools, long before it became a political potato. And we were faced with small schools without sixth forms, and we needed to get sixth form education available for everybody. And that was really the founding of the comprehensive schools. And it just grew and grew from there. And we had, we led the country in all sorts of different things. We had fantastic structure policies for the whole county.
Yeah.
Now we don't have structure policies. We have 6 individual local policies for Gloucestershire, none of which connect with each other.
Yeah.
It simply doesn't make sense.
Yes.
We're hopelessly over-governed now with 7 chief executives in the county, 7 councils in the county, and we ought to have a single county doing everything, because half the work we used to do in the old days has been privatised or taken back by government. And you don't need this enormous administration for the county. You need people with vision who can see how the county is going to work as a whole. And that was my mission, really, until I got asked to do another job.
Yeah. Well, I was going to come on to say that background and that Gloucestershire heritage and Gloucestershire perception made you an obvious candidate, presumably for Lord Lieutenant, who is the Queen's representative in the county. And you did that for many years, didn't you?
I did it for a bit longer than the average, 18.5 years.
Yes.
And it was a complete shock when I was asked. I had not expected it at all. I suddenly got a letter from the Prime Minister saying, I'm minded to recommend you to the Queen to be Lord Lieutenant. And so I tried to find the phone number of Downing Street. That's not very easy to find. Eventually I got home with it. I rang up the Prime Minister's secretary. I said, how many people in the running? Oh, that's all been done. It's just you.
Yes. In a sense, it was rather naive of you to think that it wasn't all done and dusted and sorted. Yeah, but so, yes, so but that's a major commitment, isn't it? I mean, that's not a it's a part-time. It's not a part-time job, really, is it?
No, it takes about 4 days a week. It's a very busy county, and we have more royal visits than more or less every other county. I think bar Hampshire.
Yes.
We always have done. Those all have to be timed and organised right down to the very last minute. But I found being asked to be Lord Lieutenant was pretty easy for me because I'd been working with and for the county for about 20 years or so, and I knew exactly who everybody was and how everything worked.
Yes.
If I'd been pulled in out of the fields to be Lord Lieutenant, it would have been a pretty difficult learning curve, I think.
Yeah.
So
well, I mean, that's presumably why you were chosen, because at least somebody had done their homework and realised that you were the man for the person for the job.
Well, they have a sort of search party that consults all sorts of people in the county. And people used to come up to me and say, "We've got anything to tell us?" And I said, "No, we had a good harvest and the weather's fine. We got the wheat drilled." And they had all been consulted, you see, and were waiting for an answer. I had no idea that they'd been consulted. I just said, "We had a good harvest." But nowadays, I think it's done slightly differently. And they pick a name or two and they say, "If we were minded to recommend you, would you do it?"
Yes.
There, you quite had no option. You just did it.
You just did it. You did what you were told. Yes, the Queen had already pricked your name with a pin, and that was the answer. Yeah. But it was while you were Lord Lieutenant, I think, or towards the end of your lieutenancy, that you conceived of the idea of the Honourable Company, with a motto, strapline motto, whatever the expression you'd like to use, for Gloucestershire. But could you tell us what you had in mind when you came up with the concept of the Honourable Company?
Well, I was beginning to realise that councils had changed, and you had party political leaders running councils now, and they're always thinking on party political lines. And the old days of the independents running the counties was long finished. And I was feeling that there was no sort of giant in the county who was prepared to give a lead for Gloucestershire, and somebody ought to do that. And so I had this idea of a sort of livery type company. I'd had it for quite some years actually before I braved a few people to listen to me about it, and they were all hugely enthusiastic. And of course, for Gloucestershire is a very good strapline to have. You don't take party political views on anything at all, but we are able to contribute our ideas to those who do lead the councils. And I think that's very important because our membership is very, very strong. We have some giants, industry and commerce and country life and rural life as members, all sorts of people who would never join a politically oriented local council. Yeah. And that is a reserve of strength that we can use. And I think we're just beginning to use it now, and we're influencing the LEP, Local Enterprise Partnership, about things to do in Gloucestershire. We're looking at infrastructures in Gloucestershire. We had an input into the 2050 plans for Gloucestershire, which is how the county might look in another 30 years' time, although that's going slightly slow at the moment. But we are able to use the power of our membership to try and influence how things happen in Gloucestershire, and I think that's terribly important.
Yes, it's an independent, as you say, it's an independent, not mandated perspective, isn't it? And it allows the company to broker discussion in a way that others might find more difficult.
Yes, absolutely.
And you were saying that you think it's working. I was going to ask you how, given that it's what now 11, almost 12 years since you set up the Honourable Company, do you think it's matured in the way you'd hoped, or do you think there's more progress to be made, or where do you think we've won and not won as a company?
I think it's grown quite a bit actually in those 12 years. So we're able to we've given nearly £250,000 away to charities in relatively small sums of money, which mean an awful lot to small charities. We don't support the giant charities quite so much. And our membership has grown, the strength of our membership has grown. Yeah, I think it's worked out terribly well. Of course, we've had some amazing wardens like yourself who have really stuck their oar into the Honourable Company and built it in their way. And there are various different ways of building it, have all gelled together to make an even bigger and better force than I originally thought.
Yes, I think it's greater than the sum of its parts, isn't it? The different talents and experiences of members are hugely valuable. I think, like everything, there's room for progress, isn't there? There's room to develop our role within the county.
Yes, there's huge room for progress. I think we actually ought to start looking at the Church of England soon. But, certainly the local small parishes are feeling great difficulties now with the lack of support from the clergy, really, and not enough of them to give the advice and help and support. And it's no good thinking that lay people will suddenly appear out of the bushes and stand up in a pulpit and give sermons, because they won't talk over the garden fence to their neighbours. And so I think the church has got to tackle a lot of problems which perhaps they've slightly overlooked lately.
Yes, yes, and I think I mean, we had a meeting a time ago, didn't we, about anchor institutions within the county, and I think the church is clearly an anchor institution. It's not going anywhere, but it needs its input is valuable, but it needs help to develop that input, as we all do. So I think that's a very good point. I mean, the Honourable Company is trying to do its bit. What do you think about the county? What's the future like for the county, do you think? Do you have any particular perspective on how the county is doing and what its prospects are?
Well, I think if we can get our infrastructure and our commercial enterprise better organised, I think there's great hope for us. We have a county full of amazing talents. I mean, we've got inventors galore in the county who produce wonderful things, but don't always develop them as well as they could. And I mean, looking at a national basis, who invented the computer? It was the British. The Americans developed it. Who invented the Concorde and faster than sound travel? Who invented the jet engine? There's a lot of enterprise there and ideas there, which if we could grasp them within the county and build them on Gloucestershire alone, that would provide enormous strength for the county, I think.
Yes. I think you're hinting that there's almost a microcosm of the country, isn't it? Because we nationally are good at entrepreneurial concepts and initial development, but not at the follow-on. In my own area, and topically, vaccination, of course, is something again that was originated through Vaccinia in the county with Jenna, and there's so much to celebrate. We do need, as you say, to be able to develop that. So your perspective is that things look good for the county? Do you think it's?
I think we'll come out of this COVID crisis pretty well, because we've got that strength of enterprise there who are not going to sit on their behinds doing nothing. They've got those strengths within them and they're going to build on them and develop.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true, Henry. Well, that's a very positive note to end on. Thank you very much indeed for taking the time, and on behalf of not just the Honourable Company, but the county as a whole, thank you very much for all you've done for the county and for the Honourable Company. It's a legacy many of us would wish to have put against our name. Thank you very much indeed, Sir Henry.
Thanks a lot. It's been a wonderful experience. I've enjoyed my life. I've enjoyed playing with Gloucestershire. Somebody asked me once what I did, and I said I spent most of my life interfering in other people's affairs in Gloucestershire.
Well, to very good effect. Thank you very much, Sir Henry. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris.